Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our coverage of what might be the most mental qualifying session I have ever seen. It is the sprint shootout for the Chinese Grand Prix. I don't even know if we're calling these the sprint shootouts anymore. I don't know, but I'm calling it the sprint shootout to set the grade for the sprint race here this weekend. What absolute madness this was. We're going to get into all of it and more as we get into the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Before we actually talk about that, though, there is something I forgot to mention from yesterday's preview video, and it's this, if you're watching on the YouTube, Zhou Guanyu's special helmet for his home race. It's very nice, paying tribute to the Shanghai subway system. Also, there is an image on the back of it of him as a child coming to the Chinese Grand Prix himself, supporting Fernando Alonso. So that is very nice for Zhou Guanyu for his home race. But let's talk about the actual sprint shootout itself. Going into it, something I didn't realise, Aston are only 1 point behind Mercedes in the championship. So we could see a change there by the end of this weekend. There's a 60% chance of rain going into the sprint shootout. Let me tell you, that arrives. We haven't had much running at all. We had the one free practice session earlier on this morning, and that was interrupted because the grass around the track caught fire. Now, I've never seen this happen before, but apparently when the skid blocks hit the track and spits up the sparks that we see all the time, apparently the wind carried the sparks to hit the grass and set the grass on fire. So there was a red flag in free practice, which stopped the running for a little bit. In the end, that session was topped by Lance Stroll, of all people. The first time he's topped any session since the 2020 Turkish Grand Prix, where he claimed pole position. So yeah, not a lot of running there. Some teams didn't even do qualifying programs. They just stuck to race pace. So we really enter this session not truly knowing where anyone is. But going into SQ1, on the outlap, Piastri is reporting light drops of rain. The rain doesn't hit during SQ1, but there is these little bits here and there, but not too much to actually disturb anything. The big question for me over SQ1 was of Yuki Tsunoda. Really don't know what was going on there. For the majority of the session, he was about 5 to 6 seconds off the pace, which is mad for him because he's having such a good time of qualifying, but he found himself dead last for quite a bit of the session. Eventually he gets a good lap time in, but it's still not really that good. He was still in the drop zone. That pushed Russell down to P20, who seemed to be really struggling today. The Mercedes was not looking good at all until like SQ3. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, Mercedes, especially in the hands of Russell, seemed to be struggling quite a lot, but he did get a time in good enough to get through to SQ2. In the end, it was Sargent in 20th, Yuki Tsunoda in a surprising 19th. He did get a quicker time in, but still not great. This is the first time this year that Ricciardo has beaten Yuki Tsunoda in qualifying, and he was not happy at all, as you could expect. But yeah, really quite interesting there. I don't know if it maybe needed a setup change between the sprint race and qualifying. Maybe this is a track that just doesn't agree with Yuki's style. I don't know what happened there for Yuki Tsunoda. Albon will be disappointed in 18th, and then we have 17th for Ocon, 16th for Pierre Gasly. I'm going to close down my messenger tab so I don't get any more bings like that. But yeah, so the only real surprise there is Yuki Tsunoda, who has been putting in some pretty fantastic qualifying performances. I think he had 3 Q3s in a row, I think Crofty said, and to go from that to be 19th is quite the shock there. And also, the grass is on fire again, everyone. So I've never seen this happen. I've seen it happen twice today, which is very strange. Now, this delays the start of SQ2 because they had to put the fire out. And what this also means is that rain that has been predicted is given a little bit more time to hit the track. And when we get to the start of SQ2, we have a massive queue at the end of the pit lane because there's some people reporting that this might be a one and done type thing where you need to get out, get your lap in, and then we'll be done because the rain's going to come in. There was 17 cars queuing at the end of the pit lane. The only ones who stayed in the pits were Max Perez and Lewis Hamilton. And of those 17 cars, they weren't queuing in a straight line. They were all over the place. The elbows were out in the pit lane, especially when it came to getting out the pit lane as well, because it seemed like there was Alonso and Hulkenberg were fighting to get out. It was it Joe and Ricardo as well having a bit of a fight on the exit point as well. As they leave and the queue dies down, that's when the Red Bulls and Hamilton go out, which is, I think, it depends on where the rain is. I think they called it perfectly, because it does mean that they're not waiting at the end of the pit lane for their tyres to cool down. They had nice warm tyres and were still able to set a lap time, so it worked out quite well for them. As everyone basically finishes their first lap, that's when the rain hits. And of the guys who were in the bottom 5, 4 of them just go, nah, the rain's hit, we're not going to be able to set a faster lap time than this. Russell, who was 11th, struggling again in SQ2, he was the only driver in the drop zone who thought he could maybe go a little bit faster. He went out and tried to set another fast lap, but by the end of Sector 1, he was 7 tenths down on his own time, so really, really losing time due to the rain. At the end of that session, though, these are the guys who are out. There was 15th for Lance Stroll, which, for Lance Stroll, not too surprising, but for Lance Stroll, who looked very good in SQ1, top of the time session in FP1, I expected a little bit better from him. The Aston seemed to be looking pretty good this weekend, and I thought 15th was quite disappointing for Stroll, who was also quite good in the rain. So, I don't really know what happened with Stroll there. Ricardo in 14th, still not a great qualifying for him, but he has beaten his teammates. It was the Hasses of Hulkenberg and Magnussen in 12th and 13th. Apparently, Hulkenberg reporting that Magnussen impeded him at some point on that lap as well. So that might be something to look into. And then, of course, Russell out in 11th, one of the big surprises there. And now the rain is coming down quite hard, which does solve the fire issue, but does now bring a new issue of rain. And we spoke on the preview video about the rain. Now, I initially thought that the rain was going to come overnight, but it hasn't. It's come here in SQ3. But also what's happened is, we spoke about it, where they've painted the track instead of resurfacing it. They've put out this bitumen paint, which apparently is supposed to kind of be in between resurfacing and not doing anything. They're going to resurface it for next year. But because it's been newly painted and the rain's come down, the track at this point is just ice. There's people sliding everywhere. The start of SQ3, we have everyone on the inters. Leclerc is in the wall. Verstappen was off the track. Norris was off the track. There was just people everywhere. Massive cuts of oversteer, sliding. I've never seen anything like it. The rain was coming down so heavily, and it was just like, wow, okay, whoever can set a lap time here will actually do quite well. It was absolutely chaos as the track turned to ice. You could say it was Fire and Ice. Is that the Game of... I don't know the Game of Thrones book. Is that the Land of Fire and Ice? Is that what it's called? Because of the dragons? Maybe. A Song of Fire and Ice. There you go. Because there was fire, right, on the track. And then when the rain came down, the track turned to ice. So it's a race of ice and fire. I've never seen Game of Thrones in my life. Anyway, back to racing. So Piastri goes top of the timesheets just due to the fact that he's one of the few guys who was able to set a lap time early on in the session. Perez comes around a few seconds later and is able to go 2 seconds quicker than Piastri's time. Now, normally what I would do with these kind of recaps and all this kind of stuff is I kind of just go cut to the end of, oh, well, here's your top 10. But this was so mad, I've just written down my thoughts and all this kind of stuff as it happened. So Bottas went second out of nowhere. Verstappen was on a reasonably good time, had a bit of oversteer, and then went through the gravel trap on the final turn. Lando Norris was looking incredible, and went purple in Sector 1 and Sector 2, but he also went through the gravel on the final turn. Alonso came out of nowhere and went quickest. Verstappen and Norris both had their times deleted for going through the gravel. Then Hamilton went quickest of everyone. Then Norris went quickest of everyone, but he then got his time deleted, which leaves us with this top 10. So it was Zhou in 10th, Norris 9th, Bottas 8th, Piastri 7th, Leclerc 6th, Perez 5th, Sainz in 4th, Verstappen in 3rd, Alonso 2nd, and Lewis Hamilton taking pole position. But then, as the session ends, Lando Norris gets his lap reinstated. So his lap is just back, and he's on pole position, just out of nowhere. So here is our top 10 for the sprint race tomorrow. So Zhou in his home race will start 10th, his teammate Bottas in 9th. A great result for both of the Stake F1 team kick Saubers. Piastri will be a bit disappointed in 8th. Leclerc in 7th, he should be relatively quite happy with that, considering he started SQ3 in a wall. Perez only good enough for 6th, Sainz for 5th. Verstappen is in 4th. I expected better from Verstappen, who, you know, obviously the Red Bull is the quickest. Verstappen is like a master of wet weather, but he really wasn't able to hook it up here today, so only 4th for Verstappen. Alonso, very good in 3rd. Lewis Hamilton in 2nd. Now, Lewis has been shown many times over the years how good he is in the wet weather. Now, Mercedes was not looking good at all this weekend so far, but he hooked it up really well here. I don't expect him to stay in that upper top 5 or anything like that during the sprint race, because I just don't think the Mercedes has it. But it is Lando Norris on pole position for the sprint race tomorrow. My goodness, I told you in the preview video to expect the unexpected, and my God, the unexpected turned up today, because this was utter chaos, and I loved every second of it. Absolutely fantastic. Looking at the forecast, it looks like there won't be any more rain during sessions, but it looks like it's going to rain overnight, so there might not be very much grip for the start of the sprint race tomorrow. So I think there's still quite a bit of drama to come throughout this weekend, and I personally look forward to it an awful lot. We'll be here tomorrow morning to talk all things sprint race. Then we're back later in the day, I think it's still in the morning British time, for qualifying for the main race. Then we'll be here Sunday morning for all things Chinese Grand Prix. I will see you then. Let me know what you thought of this absolute madness in the comments down below. Until next time though, have a good one. I'll see you then. Goodbye.